So Sydney Sweeney is having the worst week of her career, and here's why. First, 2 of her movies flopped back to back, and now she's about to drop her 3rd project, The Housemaid, but the buzz around it isn't looking good either. And then out of nowhere, she drops an apology about her American Eagle.
Hollywood loves a fast rise, but it loves a public fall even more. And right now, Sydney Sweeney isn't just facing online backlash. She's watching her image, her box office pull, and even her industry relationships crack all at once. Brands are quietly backing away, movies are underperforming, and insiders say even people she used to stand next to are now keeping their distance. This isn't just internet drama. This could be the most dangerous chapter of Sydney Sweeney's career. So let's talk about how she went from Hollywood's golden girl to someone the industry suddenly doesn't know what to do with. Not that long ago, and I mean really not that long ago, Sydney Sweeney felt completely unavoidable, but not in an annoying way, in a, yeah, she deserves this kind of way. Everywhere you looked, there she was. Then Euphoria happened, and suddenly Sydney wasn't just another young actress on HBO. She became a cultural reference point. Cassie wasn't just a character, she was memes, TikToks, Halloween costumes, think pieces, and heated debates every single Sunday night. And here's the important part people forget. Cassie wasn't written to be loved. She was insecure, emotional, self-destructive, the kind of character that usually gets dragged online. But instead of rejecting her, audiences leaned in because she felt uncomfortably real. Not polished, not aspirational, just messy in a way people recognized. That only works if the acting is solid. Then The White Lotus dropped, and that's when the industry really started paying attention. That role proved something critical. Sydney wasn't a one-note TV breakout. She could slide into an ensemble cast, hold her own next to veteran actors, and still leave an impression. Critics started using phrases like surprisingly nuanced and emotionally fearless. Hollywood loves those words. And she wasn't afraid to look bad on screen. No glam filter, no vanity acting, no softening the edges. That alone separated her from a lot of her peers. So no, she wasn't just booked, she was respected. And that matters more than followers or trends ever will. Sydney arrived at the exact right moment in pop culture, when audiences were tired of perfect heroines and obsessed with flawed women who made bad decisions and owned them. The early 2020s were all about authenticity, whether it was real or not, and Sydney fit that moment perfectly. She felt raw, relatable, a little uncomfortable, which made her interesting. And behind the scenes, you could tell this wasn't random. She wasn't just being cast, she was being positioned, carefully, intentionally, the kind of positioning that suggests this could be a long-term player. Those opportunities don't fall into your lap unless a lot of powerful people believe in you. That's why when people say this downfall came out of nowhere, they're not exaggerating. Because from the outside, everything looked aligned. The timing, the roles, the momentum, which is exactly why what happened next feels so jarring. The shift didn't happen overnight. There wasn't a single scandal, no headline moment where everyone went, "Oh, that's it." It started quietly, almost invisibly. Little comments here, a TikTok stitch there. People weren't angry, they were confused. Fans began saying things like, "Am I the only one who feels like something's off?" And once that sentence appears online, the clock starts ticking. Suddenly, her brand deals felt louder, not bigger, louder. Every campaign leaned hard into the same thing, the same imagery, the same talking points, and instead of feeling effortless, it started feeling calculated. Her public image also shifted. The styling got exaggerated more. The messaging felt sharper, but not clearer. It wasn't that she changed, it was that the balance changed. Before, people saw an actress who happened to be attractive. Now some started seeing a brand who happened to act. And that distinction matters more than people realize. Online, the questions started rolling in, not as accusations, but as curiosity. Is this empowerment or just really good marketing? Is she in on the joke or doesn't realize how it's coming across? Who is this actually for? Because here's the thing, audiences will forgive almost anything, except confusion. At first, these conversations lived in niche corners of the internet, film Twitter, Reddit threads, TikTok comment sections with a few thousand views, easy to ignore. But then those takes started getting stitched, screenshotted, quoted, repeated. And once the internet starts reframing you instead of reacting to you, you lose control without realizing it. She was no longer being talked about for her performances. She was being talked about for the idea of Sydney Sweeney. And that's dangerous territory, because once people start projecting onto you, you can't steer the story anymore. By the time it feels loud, it's already been loud for a while. And Sydney's problem wasn't that people were criticizing her, it's that they were starting to define her for her. That's when momentum quietly starts the shift. This is where things started getting uncomfortable, not loud, not explosive, just noticeably different. As Euphoria Season 3 began creeping back into conversation, fans started realizing something strange. Zendaya and Sydney weren't being seen together the way they used to be. No joint press clips floating around, no playful interview moments, no red carpet proximity shots. And that might sound insignificant until you remember how Hollywood works. There were no statements, no headlines confirming anything, no dramatic fallout stories, just absence. And in this industry, absence speaks louder than any PR apology ever could. Zendaya isn't just another actress, she's a brand masterclass. Her career has been almost surgically precise. No messy overlaps, no accidental controversies, no oops moments that spiral out of control. Her team doesn't move casually, they don't let narratives form without intention, and they definitely don't let association become a liability. So when fans started noticing that Zendaya seemed to be keeping a careful distance, people didn't assume coincidence. They started asking questions. Why now? Why so clean? Why so quiet? Because historically, Zendaya hasn't had an issue sharing space with castmates when the optics make sense. That's when speculation kicked in. Was it personal? Was it political, given everything swirling online at the time? Or was it something much simpler, a strategic decision to not get pulled into someone else's growing controversy? And here's where it gets interesting. Whether any of those theories are true almost doesn't matter, because perception does the damage before facts ever arrive. And the perception forming online was clear. Zendaya was choosing caution. She was protecting her image, her trajectory, her carefully maintained distance from chaos. And standing next to that silence was Sydney, not actively doing anything wrong, but not doing anything to regain control either. That contrast became impossible to ignore. One actress moving with precision, the other letting the narrative drift. And once audiences notice that imbalance, they start drawing conclusions on their own. So the real question isn't whether Zendaya distanced herself. The real question is, why did it feel believable the moment people suggested it? And that's where the optics truly shifted. And then the numbers hit. And numbers don't lie. They don't care about talent. They don't care about online debates or think pieces. They just sit there, cold, public, unforgiving. Within a relatively short window, Sydney found herself attached to several theatrical releases that simply didn't connect with audiences. Not underperformed expectations, not soft opening. They missed badly. But Christie was the one that really raised eyebrows, because this wasn't just another paycheck role or studio assignment. This was personal. It was a passion project, the kind of actors talk about when they want to be taken seriously. Produced under her own company, marketed as prestige, given a real theatrical push. This was supposed to be a statement. And then opening weekend came, and it barely scraped past $1 million. That's not a disappointment, that's a warning sign. Because when a film with that much intention, that much promotion, and that recognizable of a lead fails to draw people in, the industry doesn't ask, was the movie good? They ask, is the name still selling tickets? Then came Americano, then Eden. Different genres, different tones, same outcome. Each release quietly reinforced the same uncomfortable question. Are audiences actually showing up for Sydney Sweeney, or are they just talking about her online? And you could feel the shift in how people discussed her. The comments weren't angry, they weren't even harsh, they were apathetic. People started saying things like, I'll catch it on streaming. I'm kind of over the whole conversation around her. I don't feel excited anymore. And that's the part Hollywood fears the most. Hate still sells tickets. Controversy still drives curiosity. Indifference kills careers. Because once people stop feeling anything, studios start making phone calls. And not the good kind. That's when the narrative quietly changes from she's having a rough stretch to is this sustainable?
And that question lingers longer than any bad review ever could.
Then came the American Eagle campaign. At first glance, it should have been routine. Another fashion deal, another glossy ad, a paycheck, exposure, and maybe some Instagram buzz. But it didn't land that way. Almost immediately, people started reacting differently. Not with playful critiques or memes, not even with skepticism. They felt uneasy, confused, suspicious. The messaging, talking about traits being passed down, struck a nerve for some. Whether it was a tone-deaf misstep or a weird attempt at relatability, it didn't read as clever. It read as off. And here's the kicker. Sydney didn't say anything. No explanation, no clarification, no social media post. Just radio silence. And in the age of instant reaction, silence isn't neutral. Silence is a statement. Silence lets the narrative spin on its own. Then came the quietest headline of all. American Eagle replaced her with Martha Stewart. No press release, no apology, no acknowledgement, just gone. Think about that for a second. A brand of that size doesn't make moves like this lightly. They're not chasing headlines, they're calculating risk. Every campaign costs millions. Every misalignment can ripple across demographics. And suddenly, someone who was supposed to be a safe, rising face is now considered a liability. This wasn't cancel culture. This wasn't fandom outreach. This was risk management in real time. And the implications? Huge. In Hollywood, brand deals aren't just money. They're credibility. They're cultural proof that you can sell and influence outside of just a single role. When a major campaign quietly walks away, it sends a message louder than any critic's review. You are no longer untouchable. You are now a question mark. And in the weeks that followed, the story didn't die down. Every social media thread referencing Sydney's campaign carried that subtle undertone of, what happened? Why didn't she speak up? Is this the start of a bigger shift? It wasn't just a misstep, it was a signal, and Hollywood notices signals. For years, Sydney's silence was a secret weapon. It worked beautifully. During Anyone But You, when critics questioned her choices, she didn't rush to defend herself. During the Glenn Powell rumors, she didn't feed the fire. During smaller controversies, she let the internet chatter and gossip do the heavy lifting. Silence created mystery. It fueled intrigue. It made fans speculate, theorize, and click. And in Hollywood, that kind of control, it's gold. You don't have to shout if people are already talking for you. But every strategy has its limits. Every silence has an expiration date. By the time Sydney finally addressed the American Eagle backlash during the press tour for The Housemaid, the effect was different. Her words weren't spontaneous. They didn't feel urgent. They felt calculated, strategic, and people noticed. Social media didn't hold back. Oh, now you're talking? Funny how this lines up perfectly with your promo tour. Was it ever about explaining or just about selling tickets? Even if her apology was genuine, the timing stripped it of sincerity. The narrative wasn't just about the ad anymore. It was about perception. Because in PR, timing isn't just important. It is everything. A few weeks too early and she could have controlled the message. A few days too late and the story dies before it even begins, but wait too long and people assume there's nothing to explain. And that's what happened here. Her silence, once an asset, had turned into a liability. Now, fans weren't debating her talent, they were debating her authenticity. And in today's attention economy, when audiences question your authenticity, your influence starts to erode fast. So here's a thought for you. How long can any star rely on mystery before the internet rewrites the story for them? Let me know what you think in the comments, because the Sydney Sweeney saga feels like a cautionary tale, not just gossip. Then, just when the media circus around her seemed to slow down, old controversies resurfaced. Family party photos, casual glimpses that suddenly felt loaded, political symbols in the background, even voter registration information accidentally, or not, leaked online. All of a sudden, the image people had carefully curated in their heads, the one of Sydney as this fearless, relatable, authentic star, didn't match the new narrative. And Sydney, she stayed quiet. But silence is a double-edged sword. In the past, it had fueled intrigue and mystique. Now it left an empty canvas, and the internet is never one to leave a blank space unfilled. So people started projecting. Support came from corners she'd never actively courted before. Not because they were fans of her acting, not because of her performances, but because of what they imagined she stood for. And that's the problem. That kind of attention is fragile, fleeting. When you're being admired or criticized for reasons disconnected disconnected from her craft, it doesn't stick. It's a storm that will eventually pass, leaving behind confusion and sometimes even reputational damage. And in Hollywood, confusion is a career killer. When audiences aren't sure who you are, they hesitate to invest emotionally, financially, or socially in you. So here's a question for everyone watching. Does Sydney Sweeney's present predicament stem from actual mistakes? Or is it the byproduct of a culture that devours its own icons at the slightest hint of contradiction? Think about that, and let me know in the comments. Can a celebrity ever fully control the narrative once the internet has already rewritten it for them? Then, just when the narrative seemed tangled enough, the Scooter Braun rumor hit. Whether it was true, exaggerated, or completely false, it didn't matter. The internet reacted like it was gospel. For many fans, that headline wasn't speculation. It was a confirmation, a sign that Sydney wasn't just mismanaging her image or making a few bad PR moves. This was bigger, different, deliberate. Suddenly, people weren't talking about movie flops or awkward interviews. They were questioning her choices on a foundational level. Who is she really aligning with? What does this say about her priorities? Is this the Sydney we thought we knew, or someone else entirely? And in Hollywood, perception is reality. Once the public starts doubting your intentions, every move you make is scrutinized. Every photo, every post, every brand deal suddenly carries extra weight. Even her past work, Euphoria, The White Lotus, anyone who once championed her talent got filtered through this new lens. People weren't just curious, they were skeptical. And here's the brutal part. You can't spin a rumor like this with a single interview. You can't undo months or years of shifting optics with a quick statement. At this point, the question isn't, did she make a mistake? It's, does the public even recognize her anymore? And that's a tough, almost impossible position for any star. So here's a thought for the audience. Have you ever watched a celebrity shift so fast that it feels like you don't even know them anymore? Let me know in the comments, because Sydney's example is a perfect example of how quickly admiration can turn into doubt. If Sydney Sweeney has one clean reset button left, it's Euphoria Season 3. The show that built her credibility, the role that proved her talent, the environment where acting, not controversy, matters most. Comeback is possible, but it won't come from silence or shock value or controversy. It'll come from accountability, restraint, and undeniable performance. So here's the real question. Do you think Sydney Sweeney can pull off a comeback? Or are we watching the slow fade of a star who lost control of her own narrative? Drop your honest take in the comments. No stan wars, I want real opinions. If you want more deep dive celebrity breakdowns like this, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Hollywood never sleeps, and neither does the drama.